Hello there, Romans here, and welcome to the final video of this year where I will be talking about the best records of 2018 based on my own personal opinion. Last year I did a similar video, my top 10 records for 2017. I did only 20 reviews last year. This year I've made 40 reviews on my YouTube channel and I've listened to up to 50 records that were released in 2018. I know that some of you may think it's not that much, but 99% of the music I listened to wasn't released in 2018. So for me personally it came down to 22 records which I consider to be the best, and I've been listening to them for the past week. So I will give you my top 15 records for 2018. I'm not gonna talk too much about these records as I've made a separate music review for the majority of them. Of course, there might be a lot of records that were great and that I missed. It's pretty impossible to check everything out. And the final thing before I start, I've released my own record this year, Pursuits in Life, which is quite obviously the biggest and the most important record of the year for me. Number 15, Judas Priest, Firepower. This is one of the records I do regret not making a review for, as by the time I got familiar enough with this record there were already too many reviews out there. But I really like this record. I've heard it 10 times this year, and the biggest achievement of this record is how much it sounds like the old Judas Priest. I mean, if anybody told me that this record was recorded and released in the late 80s or in the early 90s, I would have believed that person. It sounds like a record that came directly between Ram It Down, being much better than Ram It Down, and Painkiller, or even right after the Painkiller. And also Rob Halford, who is pushing 70, he's like 67 years old, sounds amazing. He sounds like from the late 80s. Number 14, Darren Malakian and Scars on Broadway, Dictator. Everybody sees what they see, what they want to see. Everyone believes what they never have seen. Come with me, let's go where we trace back the light that show. You will never know unless you come with me, let's go. Everybody dance when you wanna dance. When you start to dance, you will get in a trance. I'm a huge fan of System of a Down, and we're probably never gonna get any new albums from them, but this is the closest thing to that System of a Down like style of music. And if you like System of a Down, there's no excuse for you not to check this record out. It's really great. Number 13, Ghost, Prequel. Ghost is one of the most overhyped bands, and this record also got a lot of attention. In my opinion, this is a record where Ghost definitely left the metal territory and their pop aspiration got more upfront. And this is a very poppy record where they got influenced by the 80s music. But I think this is one of the records you shouldn't analyze too much. It's just a lot of fun. I've heard it 12 times and I'm actually liking the record a bit more than when I did a review for it. Also, my personal favorite track on the album is Miasma, the instrumental with that beautiful saxophone solo at the end. So a lot of fun, and I'm also surprised by how many metalheads actually enjoyed this album. Number 12, Lunatic Soul, Under the Fragmented Sky. This is the project of Mariáš Duda, the frontman of Riverside, and I was blown away by the album Fractured from 2017, and I regret not putting that record in my top 10 2017 records because I've listened to it this year. And Under the Fragmented Sky was recorded at the same time as Fractured, but it's a quite different record because it's slightly more into ambient and electronic music territory. But if you like these, you should definitely check it out. A great project, and I personally enjoyed this record a lot. I like the contrast that sometimes you have that electronic music, sometimes you have more acoustic guitar based music, and it's a very nice addition to the last year's record. Number 11, The Midnight, Kids.
Let it be said and let it be known, he who is free is never alone. The path before us, the world behind us, I'll wait for you there. I am on my way. I am on my way.
The Midnight is one of my all-time favorite projects or bands. They do this sort of a 80s synth pop kind of thingy, and I'm also very regretful about not putting Nocturnal on my top 10 2017's records, because I started liking this record a bit more this year. The Midnight have released a new album every year for the past 3 years, and I do prefer the previous 2 albums, but The Kids is a beautifully nostalgic 80s record that just is a really beautiful piece of work, and this is the reason why Midnight is among my most favorite artists. So we're going to the top 10 records. At number 10 I have Muse, Simulation Theory. Now this is a record that is a bit polarizing in terms of the feedback. There are people who really like it, there are people who absolutely hate it. I really like that Muse combined their music with 80s nostalgia, something similar to what Ghost did, and I really think it works. I love the synthesizers, I love the overall music. I've heard this record 16 times and it's just very colorful. I would personally say that similarly to Ghost, this is a record you shouldn't probably analyze too much, but just enjoy it. Number 9, Orphan Land, Unsung Prophets and Dead Messiahs. This was one of the very first reviews because this record came out in January, and I think it's a very good album. This is sort of a combination of oriental prog metal with some death metal elements. I really like the singing, I really like the death growls, I like the epic vocals, I like the desert-like atmosphere and imagery. Very good album, I've heard it 12 times. And you should definitely check it out. Number 8, Between the Bird and Me, Automata 1 and Automata 2. Some people see Automata 1 and Automata 2 as 2 separate albums, some people see them as 2 pieces of a one whole. I personally belong to the second group. I did a review for Automata 2 because I somehow missed on the Automata 1 and I didn't even know the band that much before reviewing it. And I really like their own version of prog metal. Usually when you say prog metal, most people think Dream Theater, and there are just so many bands that even if they improve on the original formula are going in the footsteps of Dream Theater. I'm talking about bands like Haken or Caligula's Horse and so on. There are only 2 bands that come to mind that do prog metal but in a different way. One of them is Leprous and the other one is Between the Bird and Me. I really love Automata 1 and 2. I personally prefer the second one as it's a bit more colorful, But great albums. I've heard the first one 16 times, I've heard the second one 15 times. These two albums are pretty challenging to listen to. They are both 30 plus something minutes long, but they are pretty challenging. You will need to revisit them a lot, but I think that the repeated listenings will be rewarding because I really love these two records. Number 7, Tesseract, Sonder. Tesseract is a band that became famous for playing gent, which is like the subgenre of prog metal, where you have these very rhythmically strange riffs. And I've listened to their first album, and quite honestly that was one of the records that was completely driving me nuts. I really didn't like it. But the new album, I've heard it 17 times, I really do regret not making a review for it. It's great, great songwriting, great musicianship, great singing. And I also like the sort of a new trend among prog metal bands. Between the Buried and Me released 2 albums that are 30 plus something minutes long. Same with Tesseract. Even Haken released a new album that is under 50 minutes long. I think quality always beats quantity. Number 6, Miles Kennedy, Year of the Tiger.
In the year of the tiger, I won't weep and mourn. Got no time for cooling heels, I've got to roam. In the year of the tiger, I'm gonna roll these bones. Gonna leave behind the heartache that I've known.
I've heard his record 13 times this year, and Miles Kennedy is one of the best singers on the planet. I love his voice. Alter Bridge is a fantastic band, one of my all-time favorite groups. And I really like how different his solo album is from Alter Bridge. This is slightly more into an acoustic territory with elements of classic rock, roots rock, blues rock. Very colorful but very artistic record. You will have to listen to it quite a lot in order to really appreciate it, and I just hope he will keep releasing more records. Number 5, Editors, Violence.
Bitten nails stay clean, yeah. Now talk the loudest with a clenched fist. Talk about the healing, got a witness. Oh, it takes a fight man to run a tight ship.
I've heard this record 19 times this year, and it was quite interesting that I really enjoyed the record, but the record kept growing on me even more after I made a music review for it. This is a sort of a indie pop, indie rock with some electronic elements. Very artistic record. I really love it. I do believe you have to listen to it quite a lot to appreciate it, but the songwriting is just amazing, really. Number 4, A Star Is Born soundtrack.
So when I'm all choked up but I can't find the words, every time we say goodbye, baby, it hurts. When the sun goes down and the band won't play, I'll always remember us this way. Lovers in the night.
So this is probably the most commercially successful record on this list. I do regret not making a review for this album, and I do regret not getting familiar with this soundtrack before seeing the movie at the cinema. I've seen the movie, which is definitely one of the biggest movies of this year. I saw it when it was at the cinemas for like first 2 days, so I saw it pretty early on. It's a very nice movie, but I really love the soundtrack. It's so colorful. You've got rock, you've got country, you've got R&B, you've got some soul, you've got pop, you've got electronic music. And the funny thing is that it all really works very well. You've got 2 versions of the soundtrack. You also have the version with the dialogues, And I do prefer that version because all those dialogues will kind of remind you of the story, and you'll just realize how well these songs work within that story. There are many songs that in my opinion will stay relevant and very, very popular within the pop music for the next couple of years or even decades. Okay, and we have my top 3 records. It was a bit difficult for me to decide which to put where, but here it is. At number 3 I have Distorted Harmony, A Way Out.
Of our emancipation, save us from ourselves, lead us to a better place. Take our dream, know it's real, let them know we're still here. We believe.
I've heard this record 14 times, and Distorted Harmony essentially started as a prog metal band similar to Dream Theater with their own unique take on the genre, and with the new album they pretty much left the prog metal territory and they ended more of a like alternative metal territory with a bit of a technical and prog metal elements, and I really like this album. The singing is fantastic, production, musicianship, and especially the songwriting. The songs just are great and memorable. You should definitely check this record out. Number 2, Tremonti, A Dying Machine.
What you already know. I'll take you with me. We'll carry on. I don't mind waiting. Don't mind at all.
So instead of a new record from Alter Bridge, both the lead singer and the lead guitar player released their own solo albums, and they both ended up on my top 10 list or top 15 list. Fantastic album. I mean, I absolutely love this record. The first 3 solo albums from Tremonti were not that well balanced. There were some really great songs and some weaker ones, but the new album is just fantastic from start to finish. I think that he is a phenomenal singer, fantastic guitar player, and genius songwriter. He's just one of the most innovative guitar players, and I hope that he will continue his solo career in a similar way. At number 1 I have Haken, Vecta.
Now I'm twisted out of thought by a natural selection. A horrifying violation of a human form.
I've heard this record 19 times this year, and I really think that Haken just are phenomenal. Their previous record, Affinity, was for me the best album of 2016, and their Vecta is the best album of 2018. They promised a record that was going to be a lot more darker and heavier, and they delivered on that promise. Great album. I like that it's just under 50 minutes and the songwriting is just tight. I like that they're taking prog metal to sort of a new places, and I just, you know, it's funny because I did a review for this album like 2 months ago, and at first I was not very eager to revisit that record because I was like, I've heard it enough times. And when I heard it again, I was like, wow, I got excited again, and I just kept listening to it. So how do you like my list? You can let me know in the comment section below. You can also add your own list of the best records from 2018. You can follow me on Facebook or on Instagram. You can find the links to both in the description of this video below. If you like this video, don't forget to like, to subscribe. You can check out my own original music, my live performances, my worst to best series, and quite obviously a lot of reviews that I have on my channel. Thanks a lot for watching.